welcome to the IHJW Wrestling Podcast. I'm here with Craig, Keish, and I'm Nelson. How's everybody tonight?
Dude,
I'm doing good.
Amazing. For the last 4 nights, or 4 out of the 6 nights, we got a lot of great matches to talk about. Actually,
I got a little housekeeping before we start. Craig and I were discussing something, Keish, and
oh god,
we'd like to make a request. Could you just stop interfering in Jay White's matches? Because it's getting really annoying.
He would not win any matches without your help.
Hey, it is what I do. He is the moneymaker. All right. I thought I played Yujiro a lot of money just to lay down, but I need to go talk to Evil.
Oh, yeah.
I need to go talk to Evil because there's some bullshit around in Bullet Club, and we know who the real leader is of Bullet Club.
Oh, yep.
It's Evil.
So, I think that's a good place to start. So we're gonna start kind of with the G1 Climax news, and then there's a lot of just news out of New Japan, AEW, WWE, and why isn't Lars Sullivan fired? So let's kind of start off with the brackets, because the A bracket after last night in Japan, this morning in America, is down to 4 people that can win the block. The current holder of the kind of prime position in A block is Kota Ibushi, who is looking to repeat from last year. Behind him is unfortunately Jay White, who had another. How can you have that boring of a 20-minute match, which we'll get into last night?
Oh yeah.
And then Okada still has a chance. He still is tied for the lead with 12 points, but he is in the bottom of that pool, as he has losses to Jay White and Kota Ibushi on his record. And then kind of the shocking dark horse, despite his loss to Jeff Cobb last night, Will Ospreay does hold the tiebreaker over Kota Ibushi and Jay White. So if he can beat Okada in the last night, and Jay White and Ibushi both lose their matches, he would be the shock winner of the block. But those are the only 4 that are left in A block. And in B block, who has another match tonight, the holder of the prime position is former IWGP Heavyweight and Intercontinental Champion Evil, who holds the tiebreaker over his former stablemate Tetsuya Naito, who also can win the block fairly easily. Then we get into a bit of a mess in kind of the second. The other 3 men who can still win the block is Hiroki Goto, who kind of came back out of nowhere because Evil needed a second member. Zack Sabre Jr., who did well early on in the tournament and has had some difficult matches later. And then again, we kind of called it Sonata, who has not lost since his initial string of bad luck. Although he is in the bottom of the pool for the kind of 8 pointers, he is still not mathematically eliminated, and actually, because of who he has left, has a fairly clear path to winning the block.
Yeah, Sonata has to win every single match to win the G1. Actually,
right.
So it is looking good for him with who he has next. We have Tanahashi next for Sonata, and Tanahashi has lost a lot of good matches, and it's surprising for him to see there's only 6 points next to his name, and hopefully this continues on for a story, because he's having some issues just finishing matches, even with interference. He's just been having issues of getting that 1, 2, 3 at the end.
Right, and then the finale, Sonata does get. Finally, since his defection, does have his first match with his former stablemate, longtime tag team partner, Evil, which, if things play out, will be for the B Block Championship, which is insane. The amount that's in that match. So let's kind of go through the guys who have been eliminated already, just giving them kind of their send off, and talk about their position and what they can still do. Yujiro Takahashi, again, kind of fueling the Bullet Club rumors of them maybe thinking about trimming the fat, as he still does not have a win going into the finale, where he will face Jeff Cobb, and again there is, even though it is two men that are already eliminated, there is some pressure on that match as the Bullet Club is having its kind of famous falling apart right now.
With Yujiro being down there as well, though his one like important match was against Jay Wyatt, though it was only a 4-minute match. We'll go over it further. There was some tension that was brought up between the Bullet Club because of that, because Yujiro was on the back, or seems still maybe on the back of Jay Wyatt and Jay Wyatt, but it seems that the cracks around Jay Wyatt is falling apart faster than whatever the people around him evil. So
yeah, it seems like the whole Bullet Club is starting to recognize that they don't need Jay White,
right?
Evil. When I saw that news on, I forget what website the other day, I was like, oh, finally, they're coming to their senses with this guy.
Yeah, and it's not even that Jay White is falling into second in command. It's Kenta has passed him as well, which we'll get to. But also Tomohiro Ishii is officially mathematically eliminated, but that didn't stop him from putting on match of the night last night with his stablemate Okada, which also puts more tension on Bullet Club. So the Bullet Club, being the predominantly heel faction, tends to try to game the G1 a little bit, and push when they have matches against each other. They'll lay down, pay each other off, which was a point of contention with Yujiro and Jay White. Tomohiro Ishii and Okada kind of beat the crap out of each other for almost half an hour last night.
Oh my God, that was rough. That was strong style. I remember you mentioned last week.
And he did not tap out either. The referee, Red Shoes, had to stop the match, which happens more commonly in New Japan than in WWE or AEW. Perhaps it should happen more in AEW when people have concussions. But it was a fantastic match that had
a great showing.
Very, very beautiful.
Yeah, I thought it was I'm like, oh my God, Okada's done. And it was a really good match. Again, Okada saves the night.
Right.
You know?
Definitely. And then Minoru Suzuki, who I think is kind of a shock that he's out already. Suzuki-gun kind of started off hot and fast in the tournament, and Minoru officially eliminated last night when he lost to Jay White. Of course, Keish did interfere in that match
again.
But there was.
We need to push the right people. That's why
Minoru is officially out of the G1, and then Shingo Takagi, the Dragon, also is out. Who had kind of a mixed bag. He looked strong at points. Didn't look great at points. But I'll be interested to see where they go with Shingo at this point, especially with where LIJ stands.
On day 13, to me, the Okada and him were match of the night again.
Right. It could be actually before even Evil and Sonata fight. Like that could be a match of G1.
Yeah, it was. So it was awesome.
It was a very powerful match. And then kind of a flip flop. So Taichi, who was the leader of A Block early on, has had some very bad luck, and despite eliminating Shingo last night, does not have the points or the tiebreakers to still hold on. And Jeff Cobb, who started off not doing so great and kind of had a valiant run at the end, In fact, having an upset victory over Will Ospreay in a match that we'll talk about. He also is out. So let's kind of go through the storylines for the four that still have a chance. The first being Kota Ibushi. And despite him having the inside track, I really think that he is the fourth the fourth most likely. So the least likely of the group to actually win it. And that is because of Tanahashi. I really think that his card for Wrestle Kingdom is punched to go against Tanahashi, with one of them turning heel. But and despite Tanahashi kind of having the clout to challenge for either title at any time, I don't see that happening with the title picture being as crowded as it is. I don't know where you guys stand on it.
For if we're going, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I had to choose my 4, oddly enough, I fully believe JY is the fourth favorite. Just because with everything going around with Bullet Club and what Yujiro did, I feel that Evil or Dick Togi is going to get in the way of one big win for Jay Wyatt. So, if for me, the least likely out of that 4 is Jay Wyatt for me.
Yeah, I think that Jay White, something's going to happen that just sets off some big war inside Bullet Club. So I'm also for.
And also there's always that that kind of outside chance that we could have Kota win the block and then have Tanahashi turn heel during the finals.
Holy.
We've
those words.
Tanahashi has been again for those of you who are newer for the product. He is more or less the John Cena of New Japan, but pushed well where he's never really needed the heel turn. He's had a lot of great heel enemies, be it Kenny Omega, Shinsuke, Shono. Kind of whoever it was, he's been able to hold on to the face ace of the company. I think that that most people are expecting that Ibushi will be the one who turns heel in that feud, but it could really shock us.
When I first saw him, Tanahashi, I'm like, who's this young guy? And then he's in his 40s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I started as a new guy here, watching New Japan. I watched some of his matches and stuff. He's really talented, but I think it's going to be Ibushi is going to, if anything,
right.
heel. For some reason I was thinking that maybe it's a little bowl cut, but I'm not sure.
And Kota has shown this badass side fight when he fought against Okada in Wrestle Kingdom earlier this year. Even when they lost, Tanahashi and Kota were beat for the tag team titles. He showed a kind of more ruthless side, a more dead-eyed, far-off look, and he's just kicking you in the face and in the chest and not reacting at all. Not how Kota Ibushi is yelling and wants all that energy from the crowd. He just goes and starts destroying people.
Yeah, I think his turn would be way more news than Tanahashi.
The Dark Star.
Just because he's I saw him and you go, oh man, this guy he looks like a star. He looks like someone that Vince would push. He's built like a star. He's got he's got charisma and everything. So I think his turn make more sense.
And then going to I think the two that we all agree are the two most likely, Okada and Ospreay, which is two very different directions. But if Ibushi loses, and who does he fight during the finale? If he loses to Taichi, and if Jay loses to Ishii, which again sets up the Chaos Bullet Club feud that's always kind of on the back burner, then it is the winner of Jay White versus Okada will win the block.
Oh, you mean Okada versus Ospreay?
Okada versus Ospreay. I apologize. My gut still tells me it's Okada. I have been saying that Ospreay should be in the finals of the G1 since Wrestle Kingdom, but the pandemic and Ospreay's awkward relationship with the standing up movement I think means that he has to spend another year as a solo before they push him. And I think Okada will get the proverbial butts in the seat. I think that's the match they want to see. I don't know where you guys stand on it, but I think it's going to be a long match. I'm talking possibly close to 45-minute match between them. But I think Okada does eventually put him down.
After last night, I was like, okay, I think it's Okada. After what, and then his matches, they've been hard. I mean,
Yeah.
and then watching Ospreay, I think you're right because of things that have happened in the past year. They don't want to bury him because they want him to succeed, but I think now is not the right time to put all, you know what I mean, to put all the spotlight on him. So I believe Craig's correct about that due to situations, you know.
And this is the first year in the G1, at least what I've seen, that Okada feels like he's playing from behind.
Yes.
Like every G1,
he started off very rough.
He started off very rough. Like I remember Okada cruising through G1, like, all right, he's at 8 already, and everyone's at 4. I was like, oh, well, we know who won. So it is interesting with Okada winning. It's hard to argue against that because I would want to see Kota win again, but I don't know how it will work out because it seems like it is a safe bet Okada will be the finalist, be the main person from Block A, but man, just to see Kota win it twice and like get his, like everyone said, get his fair shot. He had to fight Okada for the title, and
it wasn't the main event.
It wasn't the main event, and I was like, oh. And I was juiced when Kota won the G1 last year. I was like, oh, finally they're gonna push him. So I'm still crossing my fingers for Kota. I really want him to win it. Like, no knock on Okada and Ospreay, and they're both worthy of the title of the finalists of Block A. But I still have to pick Ibushi. I have to.
I think that. I think that 3 of the 4 are very deserving of it. People can pretty much guess who isn't. But we'll talk more about that when we get to kind of the B block stories, which will shape up a lot more after tonight. But there is a lot of interesting things, especially with our top 2 after Evil defeated Tetsuya Naito. Again, during the G1, because it's kind of an honor system in New Japan. The championship is not on the line during the G1 because there's so many matches in a row. So Naito is still the Intercontinental and World Champion, but he did lose to his rival during the last match. It involved a lot of tomfoolery from the Bullet Club, but it also set up this very interesting state of the Bullet Club, which you guys have kind of been mentioning off and on throughout the early show.
Yeah, it's there's this tug of war between, and it seems it's in between Evil and Jay White, and I think it's more between like Gedo and Jay White because you say Gedo and Evil because I don't think anyone in Bullet Club except for except for anyone there's not a lot of people that fully accepts Jay White, the leader of the Bullet Club. Even if we bring back Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, even Big Fale, I was like, you can even make an argument that they're more leader than Evil and Jay White, and so it's like
also Kenta can be argued that he's more of a leader than Jay White. Jay White has been very obsessed since losing in America to Okada. He's been more obsessed with the title than he has been kind of being the leader of the Bullet Club, which is an interesting place because kind of going through it again. Prince Devitt never was world champion. He was junior champion and then was more obsessed with bringing down the company.
To me, Jay White makes the Bullet Club look weak. Every win comes because of help. And it doesn't even look like it's a it makes him look weak. Whereas Evil comes in, and even though he does his little games and tricks, whatever, he doesn't look like a weakling. You see Jay White, and he's a horrible actor. He should be doing like B movies, like on Sharknado 10 or something. He's horrible. And I was watching him, and he's, oh, please don't hit me, and just
not the like, please don't hit me that Ric Flair did.
No,
it's like,
he doesn't sell it. And to me, if storyline be like they're looking at him going, you want to be the leader, and look at you. So I don't know. Maybe it's that. Maybe they'll bring up like, hey, look at you. You're a weakling. Keisha's not there. You're never gonna win.
Right.
Yeah, like even comparing Gedo versus Togi, it's like I would rather have this big buff 50-year-old with a choke wire than Gedo with his bucket hat. So,
and it's also interesting because Gedo, who used to be in Jay White's entourage, has been much more with Evil than he has with Jay White, and Jado's been is Gedo. I'm trying to think who's. There's been very few people who have been with the Bullet Club since the beginning, and Jado's been there for a very long time. Kind of scrolling down and looking through. As far as long-term Bullet Club members, Fale obviously has been there the longest, and Tamatanga. But it's Yujiro, who we've talked about, has kind of an interesting position in Bullet Club. Has been there a lot longer than most of the members. It's kind of in a very, very interesting position. Yeah, Peter's been there longer than Jay White. It kind of puts the Bullet Club in a crossroads, even better than a few years ago. For those of you who kind of watched through the golden age of New Japan, when they had the split between the kind of OG Bullet Club and the Golden Lovers. I don't think that Evil and Jay White will have the match that Cody and Okada had. Cody and Omega had, but I do think that it could have a lot of heart in it, if that makes sense.
I just have my doubts, like just going like if they did have a match between Jay White versus Evil, that's just a long 30-minute match. I don't know if I could sit through. Like I would watch Evil versus Tamatanga. Like the only there's not a lot of people where I would be excited to see Jay White face. But Evil's like, dude, there's a lot of people in Bullet Club. If they said, oh, we need to know who the leader is, it's Evil versus this person.
Do you think they'll try to turn him face?
That's what's funny, because if you think about how Jay Wyatt was tried to be brought in Bullet Club by Omega, then he went to Chaos and left Chaos. It's just so funny that he was face for a little bit before turning heel. And even when he was face, I didn't care.
I think he might be better as face, because as a heel, he tries to do the old, Midnight Express thing, the little please, and he doesn't pull it off. Sort of, I don't know, it just.
And here's something that's interesting, and again, it could be a troll, but multiple sites are now reporting Kenta as kind of the co-leader of Bullet Club.
Holy crap!
Now.
I didn't even see that right now. Wow.
Which is very interesting, and we'll have to see kind of how that plays out, because kind of getting back to the G1, Kenta is one of the shock eliminations already. Yoshihashi, who we talked about last week, was kind of no big shock, but Kenta has been eliminated, and especially if Jay White doesn't win A Block, that gives Evil even more kind of credence as a hostile takeover, and Kenta never has really kind of appeared to want to be the leader. He's been more of kind of where the underlings of the Bullet Club have kind of gone to for help, if that makes sense.
More like a VP, like more of an
IRS.
Yeah. To me, it seems like Evil wants it. Just that's what he's shooting for.
Right.
And Kenta joined the Willow Club just to spite the Japanese fans to begin with. So.
Yeah, he's more of kind of Finn when he was the leader, where it's more I'm not doing this for power, I'm doing this because I hate you kind of a thing. So that's kind of the interesting storyline. One of the interesting storylines in B Block. Also, Juice Robinson,
like Dark Horse,
not had a great past few nights and has been eliminated. We've talked about Tanahashi's fall, and unfortunately, Yano, after starting off 3-0, has not had a win and is officially out. But after the kind of top block, which is centered around that feud between Evil and Naito, it kind of gets very interesting because I would say everybody who's tied at 2 was kind of a dark horse going in, and now all of them have a legitimate gripe, a legitimate shot at winning, depending on what happens tonight. Goto, who has always kind of been trying to recapture some fame, I think, outside of the tag division,
and former G1 Climax winner as well.
Which
he held the X division, the neverweight title over and over and over again. So, and his wins have been. They've not just good, but they've been great.
Yeah, his wins have been. It's been interesting where a lot of his wins have been against kind of bigger names. Like he beat Tanahashi. He had some. He did have the match with Hashi, which take it or leave it. But he beat Kenta in a an almost 24-minute match, and he submitted a guy who's known for submissions. So it's kind of put him in an interesting dark horse position. I think that he's probably the biggest dark horse that's left in the G1 over Ospreay, just because Ospreay has been such a staple of the junior heavyweight division and during excursions.
Yeah, he's definitely the bracket buster, and out of everyone that's still in the brackets for both A and B, like he's the one name that really stands out as, oh, wow, out of everyone, it would be Tanahashi there, right? We would all agree if we were going to change one name out of those 4, it would be Goto for Tanahashi
or Kenta if you were going to try to do a 3-way for Bullet Club. But I would agree that Tanahashi, that it's kind of a shock that they switched that result and had Goto beat Tanahashi in their match. Then you have Zack Sabre Jr., who
we talked extensively
about, but he's the sole member of Suzuki-gun that's left not eliminated right now, and he's also kind of always been an in for the European fans, I think, other than Tanahashi, who's toured Europe. I think that to me at least, I don't see him as a legitimate threat to win the block, but he's somebody that you had to keep around to keep European fans interested.
Yeah, I think if you just take Zack Sabre Jr. as a whole, like he's a threat to any title. But it's just weird that he does well in these tournaments, but not well enough. Like I think he's only one time he was actually in the final, and he was pretty close. And he beat Okada one year and got a title shot against Okada. So it's good to see him there. Like I said, just seeing a member of Suzuki-gun and a very super technical wrestler. He's not built like Hulk Hogan or any other other people. He's just a string bean type of guy who just knows the mat really well.
You know, being a new guy to the New Japan Wrestling, to anybody that hasn't watched it or is interested, the pacing is awesome. Mm-hmm. It is not boring. You just get to it. And there's no big half an hour block in between. Right. I mean, that's what I love about this wrestling is just the pacing.
Right.
And it keeps me interested. So even if you have a bad match, which is still better than most you'll see in other promotions, they just get to the next one. And I love it. I just love this about New Japan.
And then the little horse that could. For those of you who were listening last week, Sanada is not mathematically eliminated, as after he had the rough start, he has not lost a match, including beating his stable leader and kind of running through the competition. He's had a lot of good matches, but he hasn't. So Sanada always has back and forth matches, but for him, he's been fairly dominant in the matches that he's had, including his last match beating Juice. After he beat Naito for his first win, he's really picked up steam, and it's kind of awkward to say, but if Naito loses either of his last two matches, which tonight he's facing off against Yano, which again Yano is always in an interesting spot where he can always cheat to win, and Naito does have kind of that heart of gold that he could be suckered in, and then during the final, setting up the feud against Bullet Club, he does have Kenta. Sanada does have the inside track if he wins tonight to put himself to 10 points, and he can beat Evil the final night. He is in prime position to take the block.
So this is the interesting part now, right? We have Sanada versus Yano and Kenta. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to believe for him to lose to either one of them.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I'm really hoping one of those or both of those just go to a tie. Because it doesn't make sense. Like, how it's set up. It's like we get Sanada versus Evil, and that should be the final for that block. But how do you make the story that Naito, though he just lost to Evil, his biggest loss was to Evil, that he loses against Yano?
Well, here's an interesting
or Kenta.
So here's an interesting point. What if you send out like the whole Bullet Club posse, send them all out so that Kenta can pick up the win? Because then you can play that in two different ways. One, you can say that they were banking on Evil to win the block. This was the only way to do it. Is to make sure, just in case something happened. So say Evil loses tonight, just in some kind of a fluke, Goto wins to keep him in the tournament. So beats Evil. So then you have to send the Bullet Club out to make sure that Kenta beats Naito. So it takes a whole block. Because then you can play it as they were making sure that Evil won, doing that.
And Kenta gets a win over the champion. Yeah.
Or you can play it in they're really playing mind games with Naito and making him think, is Sanada leaving me too?
Ooh.
I was thinking that he was going to lose to Kenta because of run-ins. Mm-hmm. That's last night when I was watching, I was going through. I'm like, how you? Because he's a champ. He has both titles. How are they? And I'm like, Bullet Club. They're gonna just run in, and
it's just been manager run-ins this whole time.
And it would make sense if he loses to Evil, and then Kenta, and like you said, then Sanada. Is he next? Is he gonna turn on me? You know,
if it sets up a very. I mean, I think that you have to set up everything. You have to put in the match to make sure that match is kind of the winner take all of the block. It is going to be Evil versus Sanada, and I think that's the easiest way of doing it. Is instead of having Yano do some tomfoolery where he duct tapes him to 18 people, I think that it has to be some kind of a run-in, especially if you have now that travel restrictions in Japan are opening up, you can have some of the long-term Bullet Club members potentially showing back up. I don't know what the Tama's current situation is, what Carl Anderson and Doc Gallo's situation is with their visas.
I saw something that said that they were still under
Quarantine.
what do you call it? When they're locked quarantine.
Gotcha.
So that they still can't come in.
Okay.
There was a couple sites reporting that, but I'm not 100%. But because I was wondering where they were.
Right.
And I read some stuff, and some website put like all the pictures of New Japan, and put like if they were in the G1 or if they were quarantined in whatever country they were at. So
That's cool.
So yeah, I think that has to happen. I do think that has to happen, and then if it is Ibushi or if it is Okada, I think that Sonata presents the most interesting story in the final as well.
And Sonata's beat Okada, I believe, out of the 3 times, the last 2.
Mm-hmm. They've been intense matches.
Yes.
But
yeah.
it's been kind of the joke that Sonata can beat Okada in the G1, but can't get past Yano to make it to the finals.
Yep.
As a newcomer, when I first saw Sonata, I go, this guy also championship look about him and everything. And I'm like, I look at things through the eyes of a WWE fan, like Vince McMahon. But so you see that guy and you're like, wow, I wonder why he's not pushed more. But the way New Japan runs everything and stuff is just much more interesting too.
Especially speaking of X Division, he is a former X Division champion in America,
and it's weird that every title he's really held in New Japan has been with Evil or with Ibushi.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like Bushi. Bushi. So
there's lots of Bushi things, but the actual Bushi, the guy with 18 masks.
Yes. Amazing.
Before you guys introduced me to New Japan, I had remembered seeing the LIJ, Los Ingobernables de Japón. Sorry, my name's messed up. I saw their logo and everything, and then you see them as a stable, and you're like, wow, that's interesting, Bullet Club also, just like their factions are really cool.
And here's the thing is say what you will about Retribution. The Hurt Business is, no pun intended, has been hurt a lot by this whole their faces 1 hour, heels another hour on Raw. The New Day was just split.
We're gonna talk about all this WWE soon.
The Dark Order has had a very very uncomfortable beginning.
Before Brody Lee.
Before Brody Lee, and the Elite is kind of more of a YouTube program than a wrestling stable. I would say that the top 2, if not the top 3 factions are all in New Japan, with LIJ and Bullet Club being the top, and Chaos kind of trailing in third there, but still better than the American factions in my eyes.
Yeah, because Bullet Club and LIJ, I'd heard of or seen their logos before I even, I knew what New Japan was, but I didn't know but I had seen it around, especially Bullet Club. Bullet Club was huge. I'd see their shirts everywhere.
Right.
I'm like, who is this, And then, but you don't see factions from, other organizations. You don't see someone in Japan wearing a Dark Order shirt,
Right.
But, I think right now that New Japan is number 1 with wrestling and everything. I don't know. I love it. Man.
So for me, I have an unfortunate
You're
bias.
Zack Sabre Jr.
Zack Sabre Jr. Oh. So my favorite faction, if we're gonna just jump to this real quickly, is actually the UA, the Undisputed Era. Then you can go jump into New Japan territory, because at least for that faction, compared to every other faction in WWE, maybe the Hurt Business too will be in that with UA, as in not top, but just doing this. They care about their crew.
See, I might be able to see that if I could see them, because when I look straight out, they're all much below my eye line.
That's hurtful to say.
Yeah.
But true.
That's true. let's continue on with this before we could talk about WWE stuff, because I know I want to chop in the bat, and that's going to take a while.
So the other kind of big news coming out of New Japan is that a lot of people expected, since New Japan does have a new president, that they thought that the restrictions between AEW and New Japan wrestlers would be lax, especially with Tanahashi making a surprise appearance on Dynamite last week. Not in person, obviously, because he doesn't want to get COVID.
Or travel all the way down to America in the middle of the G1.
But Cody Rhodes being the one who kind of threw cold water on it, saying that he's perfectly fine with the open contracts like Jon Moxley and Lance Archer have to kind of go back and forth, and Chris Jericho. But he said that there would never be a fully kind of combined pay-per-view like ROH and New Japan had, or even, ironically, WCW and New Japan had years ago.
Yeah, that's how I first saw Liger.
Mm-hmm. So kind of throwing a lot of heat on himself, I do believe, to saying that AEW doesn't need New Japan, more or less, was what he said.
It's not even his choice, because New Japan also still gets wrestlers from Ring of Honor, and when I was reading some stuff, it was saying that some AEW wrestlers were still on the roster in New Japan, so it might just be Cody trying to make AEW sound like, a
standalone.
You know what I mean? Because New Japan, I don't think it would be in their best interest just to be locked down with one promotion, because if they can work with Ring of Honor and AEW, to get their, but I don't know about that. But
so this is a hot take from me. I despise Cody Rhodes. To me, the biggest egos that have ever been in wrestling have been, first and foremost, Hulk Hogan, which I don't think people would argue. Second would be Triple H, which again, I don't think a lot of people would argue. But my argument is, I think the third biggest head in wrestling has been Cody Rhodes. Kind of rejecting. I know there's mixed feelings about Stardust. I will always be a fan of Goldust until the day that I die. But kind of completely rejecting a contract that was your most over gimmick in WWE. Getting a stupid neck tattoo. I don't care what people say.
Oh, that's horrible.
But his entrance into All or Nothing is the biggest ego stroking, like public ego stroking, I've ever seen since Hogan had Nick Patrick quick count Sting when it should have been a slow count at Starrcade. And for those of you who haven't seen it, Cody came out in kind of this grandiose entrance, because that's what All or Nothing was kind of trying to capture, the Wrestle Kingdom big, beautiful entrances. He came out, his wife handed him a sledgehammer, and he destroyed a stone thrown on the entrance ramp.
And it was very similar to, I think, 3 WrestleManias ago for Triple H's.
It was a blatant copy of Triple H's
King
throne.
of Kings. Yeah,
and I mean, you're Cody Rhodes. You're the third biggest name in your own wrestling family. You don't take shots at probably a top 5 biggest name in professional wrestling ever at your company's first little rinky-dink. I still consider AEW a rinky-dink promotion. You don't take shots, and that got to me hard.
So, they were talking about AEW, and Howard Stern brought up, he said, hey, whatever happened to Goldust? I love Goldust. That's my favorite gimmick ever. And Robin said, oh, he's in some backyard wrestling thing now.
He said backyard wrestling.
Jim Cornette had he talked about it in his podcast, and he said, well, I wouldn't exactly call it backyard, but I just think when I saw him come out, like you said, with the sledgehammer and stuff, it just looked like a little kid breaking like his like toys in his room. The sledgehammer was tiny. The little Triple H monument or whatever it was, chair or whatever it was, looked horrible. And
it looked like it was supposed to break that way
Yeah.
too. It didn't look like he did damage to it. It looked like
was
that's why I worry.
set.
Like you press this button and these things will just fly off.
and I'll give everyone their due. His dog collar match with Brody Lee was
amazing.
fantastic. But
And that was for free.
I see Brandy as more of a star than Cody. I see her as more of a star. I don't see it.
yeah, Cody looks horrible. It looks like he got some jacked up Cadillac tattoo on his neck, and then dyes his hair. Like when he was in WWE and he left, and then I heard, because I didn't know anything about New Japan and stuff, and he went over there, and then he blew up, and even I started hearing about him. Like, oh, good for him, you know.
And he had a great run in New Japan, but I think that was because of Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega was literally on top of the world at that point because he had the 3-peat with Okada. That was that anybody. I think you can show that to non-wrestling fans, and they would love those matches.
And they'll get
It's
the
also
storytelling for
legacy
that
of
whole
his
story.
dad and stuff over there. You know, it's like, you know, he's a Rhodes. It's, you know, it's a name. You know, he's not the best wrestler, so I thought maybe they helped him out too.
Yeah, Dustin. I will always defend Dustin as a better wrestler than
love
Cody.
Dustin. He's doing his best work right now. I think, in my opinion, he's doing for his age and everything.
For his age, it's just to me his Goldust feud against Roddy Piper will always be will be.
Wow, I just got a
Goldust.
flashback to 1995.
It's just
in general right now. I like what he's doing because he's just showing that he can work. He can still work at his age, and
he's willing to take crazy bumps for his age.
it's good for all those backyard wrestlers like the Janela's in there to see somebody like him, though. You know, that's what a pro is. You know, like you don't have to do a million backflips, flippity flop things, and 10 million super kicks. You know, you can wrestle too.
without Jericho and Dustin, I think even with Jonathan Good, John Moxley, I don't think AEW is where it's at.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. If you go back to the dog collar match, it was a great match, and I'm still weird about the whole after match interviews because WWE doesn't do it well. AEW does it okay.
But that's them trying to steal New Japan.
Yeah, and it's just really odd because like he gave this promo of, I listened to the fans and they said I should do this, and that's why I color my hair silver and all that stuff. And it's like, no, I'm just back as me. And I was like, I don't know the difference between that one and this one other than the hair color. Like, let's be honest.
The reason I want AEW to succeed is because it makes everybody else work harder.
That's true.
I don't get it. WWE gotten to the points where like, who cares? As long as our stock is up and whatever, you know.
And before we fully go into WWE,
To
and
American wrestling.
the trash fire that was the draft, I do have to issue an apology to one Tony Schiavone. I said during our first podcast, and I quote, "You will never see Tony Schiavone taking a bump like that." And on the way home, he ate Super Kick City from the Young Bucks that night. So Tony Schiavone, I apologize, but it still did not have the emotional impact of Evil's turn.
When I saw that, I was like, oh, what didn't he bring? Oh. Oh, my God.
We are also wrong here sometimes.
But that's a good thing about, you know, that's if you can predict a wrestling match, then it's not good.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So, or an organization. I think that's cool when the unexpected happens, you know. Like I thought that when I saw it, I go, I think I have a note somewhere. I think,
But as we are going to the other American production, I will kind of turn it over to Keish because I feel he had some much more emotional reactions to the draft. I kind of just accept what happens in WWE right now. If it isn't Sasha Banks, who I think she's the only person I watch right now. So I will kind of, and she was the first female draft pick of this draft. So I was fine with most of the draft, even though it was awful.
It's no, like, I totally understand with Sasha Banks and with the draft how it's set up. The champion follows the championship follows the person. So you have the draft, and it opens with
goes back to John Cena going to Raw with the WWE title.
So when you open the draft with Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns, fine, that makes sense. But then you keep going to other people. I'm still confused on why Bayley and Sami Zayn, people who hold titles.
Although Sami Zayn did turn it into an awesome work with his character.
Yeah, true. I'm like, he's making, chicken salad of what he's getting right now.
And the real Sami Zayn, not the fat Sami Zayn.
How do you pluck a feud from Raw and put it on SmackDown with Rey Mysterio and Seth Rollins, right? This would have been the perfect point to actually split the Iconics, right? You had them both drafted to different spots, and there was this wonderful, background noise of, Payne's getting pushed. No, we've not seen Payne for the last 4 weeks.
# let Billy go back to NXT.
For real. Well, let the Iconics just come back together. I don't get it. They, all of Raw drafted Retribution, which makes no sense at all. And
so again, you've had so many opportunities to end Retribution if you're a CEO. You spent all this money trying to keep them out, then you have this stupid kayfabe reasoning that it cost us less money to give them contracts than to pay all the guards to keep them out. But then you could have split them if you wanted to with this draft. You could have drafted Mustafa Ali and Slapjack to Raw, and then T-Bar, Mace, and Shatter. Is that what Mia Yim is now? Or
Shatter. She is Shatter. Mercedes Martinez is not part of the group.
Yeah, Mercedes Martinez, who got dropped from the gimmick to try to save her, apparently. You could have split them. That kayfabe Retribution makes no sense. Even if you don't draft them, just have them still show up on both shows. It makes no sense.
The first night was October 9th.
Yes.
And the second was the 12th, correct? Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, for me, to have the New Day and Street Profits, though, the segment was funny as hell. When they switched titles, I felt so cheated out of a match that they could have earned for their titles. If they did it Monday night and say, you two tag teams are going for each other's title because your guys are not on each other's brand anymore. If you lose, that title's up for grabs for a thing. But God forbid WWE does a tag team tournament, right? And lastly, New Day wins the tag team titles. Then Raw randomly just chooses Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston.
So here's a question I have for you guys. And again, the only thing that I watch live for WWE is Sasha's stuff. I have people text me when she's on. I watch it, then I turn it off. But watching the highlights, Big E looked legitimately shook.
Yes.
Is this going back to when WWE does some things like when Jim Ross was drafted and wasn't told? Do you think the three of them were told ahead of time about the split, or do you think this was in the moment, because they've been known to do that in the draft?
So for the moment, they've seen. So Big E had a big street brawl against Sheamus, and he wins. He magically goes to go backstage, and Kofi Kingston and Xavier celebrate with him, and you can tell it wasn't they're celebrating to reunite. They're just celebrating for the last time. So it's just really weird, because if you see Big E's reaction, he feels like it's out of place, but I think they knew ahead of time that they're getting separated. Because give it to Xavier Woods for acting out when Stephanie announced New Day has been taken by Raw, Kofi Kingston, Xavier Woods, and you hear Xavier as loud as he possibly can through Stephanie's mic. Hey, say Big E's name. Where's Big E's name? Where's Big E's name? then he's still saying it, and then Stephanie's announcing the pick for SmackDown for Big E, and their reaction seems super genuine. And thankfully, they are getting a farewell match on Friday against Cesaro and Sheamus and Nakamura, which is cool. The bar plus Nakamura, how I see it.
Which, as a side note, that's another huge gaffe, was not splitting them, because Nakamura still has so much singles potential, but that's just a personal gripe.
I was looking at the draft, and then you look at the top stars, New Japan. My favorite women's wrestler is Asuka. I just like
Asuka, yes.
Asuka.
Yeah.
And Asuka, and like, I haven't watched. I saw her wrestle.
Her Japanese matches are fantastic.
And scary.
No, she.
I recently started watching the women's wrestling on WWE, and I was like, they're really good. Like, I'd never really paid attention, but yeah, the draft was weird. I watched a little bit.
Yeah,
of
the only thing on Friday that I agree with was that Sasha has been working her ass off, and she deserved to be the top female pick. But also there were two kind of kayfabe, so outside of kayfabe, so real life interesting things that happened on the SmackDown part of the draft.
Let's go with that.
The first one was Seth Rollins got drafted to SmackDown, and then during his interview, they were asking him who he would like to work with, and just out of nowhere said, "I don't want to work with Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle can go to Raw. I absolutely do not want to work with Matt Riddle." Then it came out that Matt Riddle has been talking mad shit for a year about Becky Lynch, including
his wife was. But all of the female wrestlers, Becky Lynch and his
like
wife.
Jiggly Muscle or something.
Yes.
But including kind of one thing that came out was that apparently Matt Riddle went out to dinner with a fan, and Seth Rollins and Becky were there just enjoying a meal. This was when Becky was kind of the king of the world in wrestling. And Matt Riddle just started talking crap about the women's division very loudly so that Becky could hear in the same restaurant. Which, Matt Riddle, you are not in a great place right now. Might not want to be taking shots at probably the most over WWE superstar since The Rock.
That's
Was
what
he
got him
on
talking.
NXT at this time? I don't remember.
He was on NXT still at the time.
holy
It was
crap.
when they were together, and he apparently he took out an NXT fan and was shadily talking stuff about Becky while she was literally feet away from him.
Well, that's what got him in trouble in the UFC.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
it was
wow.
like he was that way, and they just finally got sick of him, and they found the excuse of marijuana to void his contract. Whereas, if they wanted to, they would have worked with him. But he's had that reputation forever, and I think that he thinks because he was a UFC fighter,
Right.
he's like, I'll just kick his butt. You know,
Take shots.
I think
right?
that he feels like I'll just kick his ass for real,
But
because he has that type of ego.
But for those of you who, I know a lot of people who are looking to New Japan now are kind of jaded former American wrestling fans who are saying everything's a work, everything's in kayfabe. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but Matt Riddle was drafted to Raw on Monday. So if this is setting up to be a feud, it is a very long and interesting one. And also, Becky has not commented on it. She has remained quietly happy in her pregnancy.
Yeah, and I think that's the best actions for now.
Well, Becky's a smart person. She knows how much merchandise she
They're
sells.
top of the heap. They're not going to punch down.
Yeah.
They're just like, say whatever you want, bro. You could probably be gone.
But the other outside of wrestling thing that happened,
Oh my God.
the return of Lars Sullivan, who was suspended. And I mean, the WWE is very lenient on its wrestlers saying and doing things. Case in point, Velveteen Dream is still a prominent fixture on NXT. Lars Sullivan, after uncovering some very unsavory tweets of his, was actually fined $100,000 and suspended. Then had a pretty gruesome knee injury, and then I don't know because I don't watch it. I'm going to have to go to Nelson on this. Did he perform in the gay porno or did he just appear?
Well, I was really mad because once again Gedo interfered in that. But I guess he had been saying a bunch of crazy stuff, anti-gay slurs and stuff.
And then they found him.
Turns out
on a gay porno.
And then he also.
And then this
harassing women on.
Then this week, this week after he reappeared, kind of shockingly on the show, and all these people talked about how. Literally talked about how he has been penciled in for a feud with Brock Lesnar, and he's going to be the next big heel in wrestling. It came out that he was trying to push his yoga instructor to send him nudes, despite her shutting him down many times before and warning him about it.
He said, and this is incredibly beautiful. I absolutely love your legs. And then he goes on, you've got any booty pics in those, hun? And he's like, hey, Lars, I'm going to refund you your money. I told you before, I block people who send me messages like this. So you're kind of had a warning. So, yeah, he just kept asking and stuff.
And it's just really weird because, it's hard to judge a person for who they were at 22. Like, I'm really hoping that no one judges me for how I was at 22, and no one should be. But
this was not 22.
This is not 22. This is 3 months ago.
Yeah. This was while he's out. His injury, I don't care what people said, his injury was healed. They were holding him back to try to get some heat off of him. And then he pulls this.
It's like that one guy, the anti-gay politician, and then they found him, having gay sex. Like,
right.
It's like if he's saying all these things and then he gets caught, he just doesn't seem like a smart guy.
And the rumor is that there is more heat on him in the WWE locker room than Big Cass and Enzo had. Which, if you'll remember, Big Cass and Enzo had so much heat that at one point the Big Show, I think it was the Big Show, it might have been Taker, got them to pull over the tour bus. And Roman and a few others threw them out on the side of the road because they were so tired of it. And also a famous story is that The Miz had so much heat for coming in thinking that he was a big shot because he was coming from reality TV that he had to dress in the hallways for over a year. They're saying that Lars Sullivan's heat is nothing compared to.
I went to go get some pop figures. And I saw the Enzo and the Big Cass. It was like 99 cents, and no one would buy them.
Which is worth it. But they're saying that there is one person who is still trusting in Lars, and that's the reason he hasn't been fired. There's rumors. There hasn't been directly. There's rumors that's Triple H. There's rumors that's Vince, but it has not been broken as to who it is. I mean, Pat Patterson would make the most sense.
Yeah.
It said Pat Patterson would make the most sense.
Pat, ring boy.
Yeah, Pat Patterson was a big fan of Lars Sullivan's work before he started wrestling. But it's going to be very. It's just, I don't see how he can stay on the roster.
And it's so funny how it all happened. Friday when he reappears, takes out, I believe, Morrison and Jeff Hardy. And you hear reports of he literally went around to the whole roster. And this is reported, I believe, by Titus Neer, saying sorry. He made a point to make sure he did that for everything he's done and everything he's posted and all stuff and that he's learned. It's been 3 days since that moment, and it's amazing that this happened a few months ago.
And thankfully he is on Raw and Big E is on SmackDown because Big E has threatened to kick his ass.
I think that was the name of his movie back in the day. It was a Raw SmackDown.
It's also true. So if you look at the fact that in Thunderdome, the amount of bad publicity they're getting over Velveteen Dream. Velveteen Dream, again, I'm not going to completely comment on it because I wasn't there. I don't know it. But there has been nothing explicitly proven with Velveteen Dream. There has been accusations, sure, which should be taken seriously and investigated, and probably should still be investigated by WWE. But it still has not been proven. Lars Sullivan, it's in black and white text what he said.
Yeah, it's
and we've seen. I have not seen, but Nelson has seen the videos.
You pirate ship.
Nelson has, but this is stuff that can't be denied. And if it were live, I can't imagine the reaction Lars Sullivan would be getting.
The chance you'll get
if he came out.
He's already out. I mean, when he comes out of an entrance.
Right. So when he comes to the ring, I will be. I personally will be shocked if he's there by the time that WWE goes back to live shows.
I don't think so. It's to me, wouldn't be worth it as a WWE.
Yeah.
Like they got, they're worried about the stock and all this. Mm-hmm. Having someone like that with actual proof,
right.
It's not like this Osprey also, they're saying,
mm-hmm.
there's actual posts out there of this guy harassing people. So.
Yeah.
But to double down on it, after all this came out, Lars Sullivan was a draft choice on Raw.
And he was a draft choice the Monday after everything came out.
Right. and Raw, Raw wasn't pre-recorded. Or it might have been, but it appeared that it was a live broadcast. I never know with Thunderdome completely. But
yeah, I think, and if... It just seemed like Raw this Monday was just...
treading water.
It was just treading water. The draft picks didn't make sense.
Shinsuke and Cesaro.
Together. Why would you draft Mandy Rose and a few picks later draft Dana Brooke when they're a tag team?
And also, why would you make this big deal that Miz and Morrison to mess with Otis's head, we're going to send Mandy Rose to Raw, and then she just gets drafted to Raw like 2 weeks after her debut. Like, it makes no sense.
And then you send Miz and Morrison, like the storyline of Miz and Morrison trying to take the briefcase off of Otis, and now they're on Raw. And even during the Monday night, like, New Day had to face Bobby Roode and Ziggler for the Raw tag team titles. But before the match, who was drafted to SmackDown? Roode and Ziggler. It's like... So right. Why have the match?
And also the big thing they're promoting for the season debut of SmackDown
season premiere
is Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns for the Universal title. Guess who got drafted to Raw? But
it just makes no sense.
Again, to give credit, there was one thing that worked on the Raw draft, and that is taking the Fiend off of network television and giving him more room to work on cable and taking Alexa Bliss with him. I'm not a fan of Alexa Bliss. I 100% believe that the spot she's been given should have been given to Liv Morgan. But I do think that now that it's on Raw, it's the best angle on Raw by far, because Gedo, I mean, that's like, what else do you have?
And at least now there's a legit challenger for Drew McIntyre. Like, I'm not saying AJ isn't a legit challenger or... Okay, so that's the only one I can think of right now.
Again, which is why you send Shinsuke on his own to Raw.
Yeah, they've missed out on a lot of things, and it's just really weird that this draft, it seemed like it happened out of nowhere, mm-hmm. and it was done so terribly.
And
it did nothing.
Andrade, who's again gets passed over,
and Andrade's not even drafted to either brand.
Said that Vince doesn't like him or something.
He doesn't like him because he's short.
And
also, all this speculation about who from NXT is going to get called up.
Oh, Triple H canceled that right away after what happened to Ridge Holland.
Right, and we'll talk about NXT's difficulties after we kind of finish ripping into Raw and why you guys should be watching New Japan instead. But even the Raw show was just, outside of the draft, which the draft was bad, the rest of Raw was boring.
I'm a fan of Keith Lee. I was just like, I hope they do something good with it, man. He's like, Keish is the one who introduced me to Keith Lee, and I'm like, this guy. I first saw him. I'm like, can he move? And then you see him, and he's like, he's really good. I like watching him. He's got some style about him.
And here's another hot take, and because we haven't talked about it now that we're on Raw, is that a lot of people were saying that Mustafa Ali becoming the leader of Retribution will save it. To me, Mustafa Ali's already had his 3 strikes and he's out. One is when they brought him from the cruiserweight to make him kind of a main event star, and people were just like, okay, that's we don't really believe in it. Then there was the second time, which wasn't his fault.
Yes.
But the second time when he got injured, and then Kofi Mania started as a result of it. And then the third time was the Sub-Zero mask making him the female Naomi, and the fans just didn't care. And then there was even a 4th strike where he was supposed to be the SmackDown hacker.
A storyline that was dropped like a bottle.
And it's been
empty bottle.
I mean, that's 4 big chances that they've given the guy. Give that spot to Keith Lee.
Yeah, I like Keith Lee.
And it's so frustrating because
Give that spot to the Miz.
When they introduce Mustafa as the leader of Retribution, I was down for it. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Everything will start making sense with the hacker and all this stuff and yada yada yada. And they even promote Retribution has something to say on Monday. Nothing was said. And it's like, hold on, this is your crew. This is the next big, faction, quote unquote, group coming up. And 1, they don't get time. 2, it's put aside like it's freaking Raw Underground. And so what
Raw
happens
Underground
now?
got more time.
It's just really random.
Which
there's so much opportunity for just all those people in Retribution. They're all really good. Even Mustafa Ali, he's really good. It's just randomly, just like they don't know what the heck they're doing on Raw.
Until Vince calls him flying carpet as his Retribution name. But so what I feel, because we brought it up, Raw Underground had to be one of the biggest collapses in wrestling. You build an entire segment, like it's an hour segment of every show, to build one guy.
Gedo.
One guy. And then he loses a match. It's not a competitive match. And it's not like you can say, oh, he tripped into a submission or something. No, Braun knocked him out cold. Raw Underground was a failure. There's no reason. That was a waste of months of our time.
And Raw Underground failed on this premise alone, that we had to keep going back in and out into Raw Underground. If it was the last hour of Raw, if it was the 3rd hour, I would have watched all of it for sure. But if it's a match happening, we go down to the Underground and we see Shane McMahon, and this match is showing up next, and the match is happening. Then we have another match on Raw. And we have to go back to the match that's happening, and Ziggler has him in a headlock. We'll be right back.
That's a horrible attempt to get UFC fans. Right?
and so I'm gonna compare it to one of my favorite angles in wrestling, and this is New Japan compared to WWE, how it handled it. Shinsuke Nakamura went on excursion. For those of you again who are new, is New Japan. It's kind of looked at as when a wrestler's been struggling for a little bit, they'll go on excursion, which is they'll go to kind of foreign countries to learn a little bit. And Shinsuke was a huge one because he was the youngest IWGP heavyweight champion at 22, but he kind of had this string of bad luck where he kept earning title matches but losing it. So he went on an excursion. It became this big thing because he was going to even go to America and train with Brock Lesnar, and there was even talks about he was going to appear in WWE matches, which wouldn't end up happening for years and years later in NXT. But he came back, and he came back as himself initially, but then he became the king of strong style. Which what strong style is this blurred line between MMA and professional wrestling, where the hits are supposed to make you question, did he really just punch him in the face? The best example of an American promotion was probably the Randy Orton Brock Lesnar match.
Oh yeah, when Brock Lesnar cut Randy open like
right.
a pig.
Right. so that's kind of the best thing. But Shinsuke he has a 3-1 mixed martial arts record, so he did have some legitimacy to it. And he came in with it's the Kinshasa now, but the Bumaye. He kayfabe broke Tanahashi's orbital with it, which is an entry that you don't usually talk about in wrestling. He was threatening Antonio Inoki, who is kind of the original godfather of strong style, when he had a match with Muhammad Ali, which to this day people don't know if it was a work or a shoot. Which the more it looks like it, the more Muhammad Ali thought it was going to be a work, and Antonio Inoki made it into a shoot in the middle of it. But
like they use martial arts, right?
Right,
Inoki,
and it's supposed to be this kind of questioning, and New Japan still uses it. Minoru Suzuki is probably the biggest example.
Would you say like the forearms?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, to the neck.
Because WWE never used to do that,
right? And
now everybody does the forearms.
And if you'll watch New Japan, there's no like slapping of the legs and stuff. They legitimately go for the sound of like fist on flesh.
Because I saw Okada, and he was bruised up pretty well last night.
Right.
Like,
and so that's kind of what I think they were going for with strong style. But I can't get over Dolph Ziggler, a guy who he was part of probably my second favorite WWE match of all time. Again, I will give people their due when it was when it was Triple H and Stephanie's corporate team versus John Cena's team.
Oh yeah, when he's still Survivor.
And that was a great match. But since then, he's been on a downhill spiral and been kind of this goofy guy. I can't picture a member of the Spirit Squad suddenly being an MMA fighter.
Well, we'll give him this. He's won a couple of championships in NCAA when he was there. So it was like they talk about a lot with Ziggler and his whole wrestling background. Hey, he was a collegiate wrestler. He's one of the best. And like that, he was like in the marrows of Brock Lesnar being that good in wrestling. And he's like, all right, cool. Like I liked him in Raw Underground because it got to see the mat wrestling. We didn't see that a lot from Ziggler. All we know from Ziggler was he was a Shawn Michaels that couldn't be. The seller that, well, he's a great seller, and the Shawn Michaels he couldn't be. And that's it.
Because Vince could see over his head when he walked down the hall.
And it sucks because, it wasn't like with injuries and his failed push after, I think, cashing into Del Rio and all that stuff. But I totally understand that. Like, it's hard to see Dolph as this person you can be afraid of after so many years of just floundering.
I mean, on the subject, I don't want to switching from Dolph, his tag team partner, Robert Roode. I'm like a huge fan of his. And
that's true.
Like
he's buried on the main roster.
Just the way they handle, I like the Spirit Squad. I thought it was funny, but like you said, I can't look at him seriously. But he's really talented. And while you guys were talking about him, that's when I thought of Bobby Roode, and I'm like, they're not appreciated here like they'd be appreciated in other organizations for their for their skills. In my opinion, just like I don't think they're made for WWE.
I think it's just handpicked though. Like when Bobby Roode was part of Beer Money, then became TNA champion, it was amazing. And I even tuned in for it. I'm like, who's this Bobby Roode guy? Why is he like, oh my gosh, he's like almost the Triple H of TNA. And when he came to NXT, and I was like, oh, this is good. His music is slap. His in-ring stuff was amazing with Shinsuke. Every time he defended the title, it was like, oh, we have someone to finally replace Triple H. We have someone to be a corporate guy who's actually legit and has a name. We all know Robert Roode.
Yeah.
Like, we all seen his tights of some women's face on them. It's amazing. Like, even Velveteen Dream, like, referenced that in one of his matches. And to see him where he's at because he's gotten over because of his song is ridiculous. Totally ridiculous.
To also be fair, he isn't the worst example of them dropping the next Triple H. Because EC3...
Oh my God! I totally forgot.
EC3 was... at least Bobby Roode still has matches.
Yeah.
EC3 was chasing Drake Maverick for a few months and then went back to TNA.
Oh my gosh. I still remember people talking about EC3. If EC3, oh my goodness gracious, that's amazing.
And kind of going with it, while Raw and SmackDown's problems have been self-inflicted, NXT's haven't been wholly self-inflicted. The Bobby Fish, not Bobby Fish,
Kyle O'Reilly,
Finn Balor match was amazing. But is it worth it to have one of your new big challengers out for? They haven't even disclosed how long with his injuries,
and even the champion is still
Finn
out.
has his jaw broken in 2 places,
and he just finished surgery today, and it was successful surgery. But what do you do now?
Right,
you can't. Like they just lost
the champion,
Killing Cross, just a few weeks ago. Now you're gonna lose Finn. There's no way Adam Cole should get that title again.
And then there was a horrific injury on the show. To me, for those of you that are football fans, it looked worse than Dak's injury.
Yeah, it's hard to watch both of them, but I totally agree. And the only difference between Dak and Ridge is Ridge could have been avoided. It totally could have been 100% avoided. It was a sloppy job on the catch, and he paid for it. And I'm not a professional wrestler, and I know it's hard. I couldn't last one day in the Performance Center or in LA Dojo. I'm not gonna say that I could have made that catch, but you see the feet, and even all of us know like his foot's not planted. It wasn't a freak accident like Sid, or when Sid broke Yokozuna's leg too. It's not that. It's just. Whoa, you kind of hurt yourself, and just a few weeks ago, you almost broke Johnny Gargano's neck.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not saying he deserves that. I'm not saying anything, but it's kind of clear.
To him.
I hope it's clear that this guy should not be pushed anytime soon.
Right. And go ahead, Nelson.
I was gonna say it's sort of like Nia Jax.
Nia Jax.
Yeah, Nia Jax.
But
dangerous wrestlers.
But Nia hurts other people.
Yeah, Nia hurts other
people. But I'm saying, people just like she, like you said, she beats up other people. But I think it's the risks that, AEW came in with all the, to quote Jim Cornette, flippy shit.
Yep.
And now everyone thinks they have to do it, and it's too much. You're putting these guys at risk. If you're doing 3 moonsaults off the top rope, and
not everyone has to do it.
That's what I'm saying.
Okada doesn't do like the high risk crazy stuff, but he's the wrestler that I will watch over anyone else.
And as well as like if you're trying to do strong style, like you can say it for Kyle O'Reilly and Finn, they should have led into that. They should have had matches where it was brutal.
Escalating.
Because it just sucks because you can see that they suffered. I don't know if the blood from Finn's mouth was real. I think it is now. And then when Kyle O'Reilly got a kick to the kidney and actually looked like, oh yeah, if that was in the UFC, the match would be over right now. So it's just like, dude, like I wish, they did have to make this takeover out of nowhere. It was only a 2-week build. And
it was more a week and a half.
Yeah, and they made it work. Yeah. They made it work amazingly. And it's just rough to see, like, now, instead of one of these people getting called up to WWE, which everyone thought was going to happen, like, oh, yeah, we're going to start seeing the UA on Raw. We're going to start seeing someone else come up. That was just, no, we don't have enough people now. And that's weird to say that NXT does not have enough people.
NXT was, like, the thing to watch. Like, they were...
And here's my argument, is that NXT's women is still the thing to watch for American Pro. I mean,
Yes.
Io has been fantastic. Io's every match that she's had has been fantastic. Ember coming back, I'm super hyped for, and she didn't look to have a lot of ring rust. Dakota Kai's heel turn has worked very well.
With her Diesel, Raquel Gonzalez. Mm-hmm. Great look. Love her. Follow her on Instagram, please. She's amazing.
And Shotzi is, I think, Shotzi could be the next Becky Lynch.
Shout out to Oakland.
I 100% think Shotzi could be. And she's also, again, one of the few ethnically diverse wrestlers in NXT right now. Her and Ember.
We have the returning Toni Storm, who made waves in NXT UK and was one of the reasons why I watch NXT UK next to Rhea Ripley, who is also on NXT in America as well.
But here's the whole thing, is that Rhea got a bum deal.
Yes.
She should not have lost to Charlotte, because that killed any momentum that she had. Completely destroyed it in that match. And now... this is just me, but showing off her horrible leg tattoos now in her new ring gear. She needs to go back to
that. I just noticed her back. Her back looks amazing.
No, her back looks amazing, but so she has. So this is again a personal opinion. I feel that her leg work doesn't look done, and that's why she would wear full pants for a long part of her career. But now that she's starting to wear more holes in her gear, I feel that is hurting her. Again, that might just be my opinion. I feel that tattoos become part of your ring gear. There's people like Randy Orton that it works for. There's people like Lance Archer that it does not.
Lance Archer. I was just thinking of his tramp stamp.
And also one of the funniest things is people forget Brock Lesnar has some really good tattoos, but also has a tramp stamp.
Oh yeah, he does. How weird.
But I guess when you're that big, no one's really going to tell you.
Yeah, no one's going to look at it and be like, "Yo, bro, that's a great tattoo."
But again, awesome. if you look at Rhea Ripley's tattoos and compare them to an up and comer with Shotzi, Shotzi's tattoos work better for her character. They look better done, and that's part of the reason that I think Shotzi is more of a future than Rhea is.
And then for Rhea, like the one for me, like losing at WrestleMania was the downfall.
Painful.
The burial was having her pinned between Io, Charlotte, and her.
Yeah, she's such a monster, man.
It just makes no sense why Charlotte wouldn't eat that pin before going off and getting her injuries and boob stuff. Like it's just really weird that she didn't put. It might not be because of Charlotte
didn't put Io over.
Yeah, no, Charlotte didn't put anyone over before going into injury, and I don't know if that's her issue or booking's issue, but why don't you just let Charlotte eat the pin?
But I think that's to me. I think that's a Charlotte issue. Charlotte was the one who inserted herself into that WrestleMania main event that didn't need her. Charlotte's the one who don't get me wrong. Obviously, the booking team also has a huge thing for Charlotte, but
it's fair because Charlotte, to be honest, like before Becky, she literally was the women's division of WWE and NXT. No shot against Bayley, Sasha, Becky, like Asuka. There was only one name we always heard. She is the Grand Slam champion until they made the tag team titles.
But also the uncomfortable thing with Charlotte is just that she was starting to suffer Roman fatigue.
Yes.
And also the surgeries aren't helping her. She's starting to look like a cat lady with the amount of surgeries that she hopefully is going to back away from.
Yeah, it's just really weird because I really did like her, how she looked. She looked like a pro, volleyball player turned into a pro wrestler, and it was dope. Then I was just like, hold on, what happened?
But her jealousy of Becky after Becky's push has not looked well on her. the fact that she wanted to have a United States title run because that's what Becky was supposedly gearing up towards at one point, and that Charlotte was pushing for it, and when either it was shut down by creative or whatever it was, that's when she decided to go take care of her injuries.
And I think
it has not looked... Things have not aged well. Not as bad as they have for Ronda, but things have not aged well for Charlotte.
And I think it was kind of a blessing that she was somewhat hurt during the time of who won the TNA World Title? Blanchard.
Tessa Blanchard.
Tessa Blanchard won, because I think, like, as the world goes, the WWE follows through. When Naito won both titles, who won both titles? A few weeks later, Keith Lee. Like, I think we dodged a big bullet. We dodged a big bullet of, instead of Drew being champion, Charlotte could have been champion. And that could have been a good or bad thing. I'm not saying that she doesn't deserve it, or women don't deserve to be the World Heavyweight Champion of WWE, but it just, all this knee-jerk reaction for Charlotte and her being the hardest working woman before she became injured and being on all three brands and all that stuff. It's just, it is true. It's exhausting.
But at the same time, Becky got over by being Becky. She was, that year she was by far the most popular wrestler in the world. Male, female. She was the biggest draw in wrestling since The Rock. But she did that by being her, not by creative being like, no, you're in the main event. You're in the first women's Hell in a Cell. You're in the first main event of Raw since Trish Lita. Becky earned it and worked her ass off for it. Charlotte was given it by booking and by her dad.
Yeah. Because if she was anything but a Flair, I mean, would she be anything other than Carter, you think?
I don't know. Like, it's hard to, like, really use that against Charlotte because she proved so much of being really good. I think it's more the exhaustion, because if we look at it this way, the one pop Sheamus ever gotten was cashing against Roman Reigns, right?
Right.
But nothing happened after that. The one pop Becky Lynch ever got was when she turned on Charlotte to be the heel and said, no, I'm not sharing the spotlight from you. I'm not going to be your best friend anymore. But she was able to follow through with that, right? She was able to capitalize on that one spot, become the man, and go on that road. And that's what I fully believe. Like, I can't knock Charlotte because I love to see her wrestle and she's really good. But I will agree with the fatigue. But I can't say that she's there because she's a Flair. I fully believe if you put the Four Horsemen in front of me, it's Charlotte number one no matter what, and just skill.
Here's the question though: Is Charlotte any better than Naomi?
Oh, that's dirty.
Yeah.
I would say Naomi has so much potential. So much potential. The only thing is she doesn't get the time.
I see. And so if it was Naomi Flair and Naomi had Rick had some dalliance in the 80s, would Naomi have gotten the same push?
Son of a bitch.
Because it's Flair.
And I think they had a match, and their match was not as long as any Charlotte versus any of the Four Horsewomen. Like, it's just rough because you literally use the one name out of the whole women's division where I'm like, I really wish they pushed her because she is better than what anyone thinks she is.
It's just she has a horrible finisher. That's one of the things that holds her back. And
well, I don't count that. I look at her submission.
and her husband needs to stop drunkenly yelling at people. Yeah. Where she's the one who somehow takes the heat for that.
You brought up Tessa Blanchard. I actually like her. I'd like, I don't believe the whole storyline of her in TNA, but I sort of like her attitude.
I like her character's attitude.
Yeah,
I don't like her real life like trying to steal a world title belt because nobody has pulled that off since Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett. For those of you who don't know, Jeff Jarrett held the Intercontinental title hostage and forced Vince McMahon to pay him $250,000 to wrestle one match out of contract where he dropped the belt to China, and ironically that became the seed money for TNA.
Holy crap! That's some
Yeah.
that's some knowledge right there.
It's a very, but that I don't think I can ever forgive Tessa because of that. I mean, if you look back, like titles are very, to me, titles are more important than just some belt. It means a lot. So kind of the stories that I'll go into. One is Mark Marrow, who gets a lot of crap. He wrestled a match to drop the television title to the Booty Man. For those of you who don't know, Brutus the Butcher. He wrestled out of contract because he knew how much that title meant. He was going to WWE. He had signed the contract. People were pressuring him to bring the title with him so they could pull a Lundra Blaze with it. But he wrestled a match out of contract to drop that title because he knew how much it meant. And if you look at it, again, Mark Marrow, despite the ribbings he gets because of his wife becoming more famous than him, known as a stand-up guy. Then you look at Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar, the man who is now married to Mark Marrow's wife, ironically, held up the IWGP Heavyweight Championship for over a year. So the story is kind of awkward, where Brock Lesnar won the belt in New Japan after leaving WWE for the NFL. Then there were all these legal battles where WWE was trying to stop him from wrestling in New Japan. He won all of the legal battles, but this is where rumors kind of come in. Brock says that it was because of he was tired of dealing with visa issues. New Japan says that it was because Brock was lazy and was tired of fighting the legal fights with WWE. But Brock just stopped appearing on New Japan and kept the title in America. So New Japan had to have this tournament to crown a new champion, but they had to have a new belt. And the IWGP title is one of the most beautiful belts. If people haven't seen it, it has the name of every champion who's ever held it engraved on the sides.
Just really cool.
And what had to happen was Antonio Inoki had to more or less start a new company in America, and then Kurt Angle had to beat Brock Lesnar for the title belt in America so that he could fly back to Japan to lose the title to Shinsuke Nakamura. And that, again, if you look at how Brock Lesnar is perceived in the industry compared to Mark Marrow on a personal level, they're like championship accomplishments, and where they've been in the business is very different. But that's a big thing, and that's why Tessa is someone that I don't think I can ever fully get behind because of.
She's also got a famous dad too, so you got that push.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping that the rumors and the rumblings about Tessa being in the WWE, because if you thought having a Flair as a champion again, wait till you get a Blanchard and a Flair together in the same ring or in the same company.
But there was already the awkward moment where a WWE staff member Googled female wrestler, found a picture on Google Images, and then made it into a graphic that they put into WWE Battleground, not knowing that was a famous picture of Tessa Blanchard. That has caused a lot of rumblings, and has cost the WWE a lot of money because they had to pay off the photographer for using their photo without permission.
Yeah, there's when we talk about Lars Sullivan getting in his way, well, sometimes the WWE as a whole gets in its own way.
Nobody gets in their own way more than Vince McMahon.
That's true.
Yeah, he's Al Davis. Hopefully he retires soon so that.
And did Al Davis retire?
No,
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's going to be the same situation.
I totally did not want to say I hope he dies.
Oh,
You know what
well,
I mean?
we
I'm
we
like,
don't we never wish death upon
Yeah.
anyone, but we know
we just know
the
he
writing
needs-
on the
he
wall.
needs to not be there.
Yeah, there will be a Mount Vince.
But so
something.
here's the question that I've struggled with for years. If the rumors are true, and if WWE goes entirely to Triple H after Vince dies, will it be much better?
I think they got to go public. They got to get out of the whole stock market thing. Being
Isn't that a public company right now? I thought it was.
Well, it is, but Vince owns the majority
Oh, yeah,
of the
sorry,
stock,
duh.
so he can basically veto
So-
anything.
But his wealth is dependent on
That's true.
public opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think he needs to just go private again because you can't go forward. I mean, just look at TV shows. Like you don't take any chances anymore because of sponsors. And I just think it's holding them back to make any.
Yep.
Any.
Which is why I
any
think the
forward.
Fox deal was a bad idea.
Fox pushed them. Fox was telling them the whole time. It's like, no, you have to do this. You have to do that.
I mean, the only reason The Fiend was on SmackDown for a year was because Fox said, "Oh, he's the hottest thing in wrestling. We want him."
Yeah, and Fox also told them, "Oh, hold on, we want people from Raw here too." No, we signed a contract.
I know we want Brock Lesnar as well as Roman Reigns,
Yeah,
right?
so you gotta give it. So as long as you're getting that pressure, whether it's Stephanie, Shane, or whoever, it's gonna be the same.
Well,
stuff.
here's my thing. When it comes to wrestling executives, and you guys can argue with me, whenever somebody has been the sole creative, or it's been a team that's been on the same page, sole creative, it's gone poorly. Eric Bischoff is my favorite booker of all time. He eventually, with the NWO thing, he eventually got a big head. We had the Sold Out. We had the NWO version of Nitro, and everything went poorly, and he was removed from his position. Vince Russo put the company in the ground. Jeff Jarrett in TNA. TNA could have been much bigger if he, in my opinion, if he hadn't had solely booked himself as champion for years.
and then brought in Russo.
Mm-hmm. Then Dixie Carter has had a lot of missteps. When Hogan was more or less the head of, they say it was Bischoff, but Bischoff was there for a paycheck. When Hogan was more or less in charge,
That was their biggest. That was the biggest misstep of bringing in Hogan.
it was to me, and Paul Heyman, who's a lot of people will argue is the greatest booker of all time. He drove ECW into the ground when he was solely in charge of it. ECW was the biggest product, the biggest underground product in American wrestling during the hottest time in wrestling history. But ECW crashed because it was just Heyman. Yeah. To me, you have to have multiple sources, and that's why I think it has to be Shane and Triple H together.
Yeah. I think to go forward, like you have to have a view of, all types of wrestling, old school, new school. You got to have someone like a Cornette who believes in only a certain type, but you also need to be like, you sort of have to have like the Young Bucks type, for the newer. You gotta have a mix.
Yeah, and that's and getting back to it, that's where I feel AEW's failing, is that there's not enough of that hardcore storyline in matches. It's just we're gonna have the Young Bucks come out and do 50 flips and super kicks, and then we're gonna have
as much as I like
comedy
the Lucha
matches.
Brothers, it's the same moves every time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I love Ray Phoenix, but it's like it's too much of the same stuff. You can call the moves, like you can say, oh look, he's setting it up right there. The five guys outside for some reason are all reading their their iPhones. For some reason they all meet up, backflip out, moonsault, and then I do like their tag team. I like the AEW's getting a bunch of tag teams, but you can just look at them in WWE and sort of see what's coming. It's just like It's too predictable. I think they just need like different bookers, and
Keisha's been oddly silent during this.
I know.
I think it's because he's a Vince Russo guy. He will have every match be on a pole.
Yep, and there'll be a finger poke of doom twice.
Hey, there's a play. Hey, there's like remember old days scaffold match or
Oh
you know,
god,
I will hate scaffold matches until the day I die.
no, those those are the reasons why I never watch ECW and to this day because I'm scared for my own
when
life.
you do too many of those things, it's like you said, like the fatigue of always seeing like Charlotte or whatever. Have your matches and then every now and then have a ladder match or something. It's cool. It's like oh that's nice, whatever. Put your hacks up there. If they get hurt, it won't matter. It's like, hey, Jay White, you're going to do a scaffold match with a ladder. Get up there. And
TNA tried to do it with AJ Styles by just being like, all right, what are you going to fall off of this week, AJ?
Styles, another, oh my gosh.
But
I love that
if
guy,
we go back to this, since we're talking about if Triple H took over after the passing or the retiring of Vince McMahon, I can't think it should get better. If we've seen all of what we've seen for NXT and how it was built and the very humble beginnings of Seth Rollins and Jinder Mahal, even Big E counting to 5, the Shield, Big E Langston, and how it is now. It's I can't help to think that NXT can be Raw and a B version of NXT can be SmackDown. And I can't doubt that. I really can't doubt Triple H's pushing abilities, like to get Shinsuke Nakamura over and pairing him with the perfect partner in Sami Zayn.
The only reason I think I would disagree is because NXT is not it wasn't in the spotlight.
That's true.
So, you know what I mean? So Triple H was able to do whatever he wanted without Mr. McMahon interfering. But when you're trying to do that with Raw or SmackDown, you're answering to the board, and you're answering to money people.
And
I think your NXT can be great.
But it will cost money.
I also worry about, because I remember the Reign of Terror when you had probably the most over roster in history, and Triple H just strangleholded that belt.
That's true.
Probably make himself champion again.
That would be my fear, is that if he was given the spotlight, would he choose that he has to be the person that's over? That he's the one who saved WWE, not Vince or Shane. That it had to be him.
I think that Shane needs to be the one with the final say.
And to even go off that point of the final say and who should have the roster, it's just the biggest thing for me, and this will hold true even when Vince is gone or whoever else is in charge, is that you have to build from your future. You have to build to right now to your future. I still remember watching wrestling and seeing a bunch of old people I've known, like Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, even Jake the Snake a couple of times, but seeing Stone Cold, seeing Rocky Maivia, seeing all those, like when Kane appeared, Undertaker was there. Like Undertaker's been the most consistent name in WWE history, right? But The Rock, Stone Cold, Mick Foley, all these people came out of nowhere. Kurt Angle. I fully thought that he was a fake person, and he's a real person that won gold medals with a broken freaking neck. So, and they can do that. The WWE knows how to make stars. They can, and I just find it hard to believe that
they're choosing not to.
They're choosing not to. They had a chance with Shinsuke Nakamura. They had a chance with Asuka, just making her like not just a great wrestler and a great figure and this great person and on Raw, but being like, oh, you know what? There's the Four Horsewomen and Asuka, and that can carry a company.
But they chose to take away her YouTube channel instead.
I noticed one thing, though, about a lot of the stars we just mentioned. They all come from territories.
That's true.
So you have one developmental place where everybody's coming from, whereas you had, Stone Cold coming from Texas territories out there, or Undertaker also.
Taker was a Memphis person.
Yeah, he was and so you'd have all these coming from different styles and different territories, and they were used to working. I mean, Mick Foley. Mick Foley was no one but so I think if there were like OVW, there's still some out there where they could develop, not just in NXT, that might help the situation. But
to kind of counteract that, New Japan hasn't had to rely on territories. They've self-made everyone. They pretty much everyone in New Japan. They'll have guest spots. They had Jericho come, but like when you go back to the Three Musketeers, when Shinsuke, Tanahashi, and Shibata came up out of nowhere, they were just rookies that trained at the dojo, and they brought them out of nowhere. And it's just like this. It's cycles where you still have. I mean, you still have the older people around. It's kind of the evolution model where you have the older people still around and kind of kicking in New Japan. You have the current stars like Naito and Okada. You have the young guys coming up after them like Ospreay, and then you have the young lions that just kind of come up when they're ready. It's because New Japan can tell these long-term storylines that you don't have to rush them. Like with Keith Lee. Keith Lee was in his 40s when he started, and they had to rush him.
Do you think it's possible because of the way they train the wrestlers, whereas over here, the WWE Performance Center, it's all about look and not really the moves like over there?
That's true, because I remember there was this article that talked about Finn Balor after the Rich Holland incident, that someone referenced that when they brought up Finn from NXT to Raw, he was asked to gain 15 pounds, 15 pounds of muscle, but that made him, big and slow. But you got to look like a Vince guy, and that didn't work out for him. So I totally understand. Like even Ember admitted it. Like the multiple times she tried out for WWE, they literally told her, "You just don't have the look we want."
See, that's a thing that multiple wrestling guys will talk about, people that work for them and stuff, that it's more about the look. And then to bring New Japan, you see these guys, they know how to wrestle. And then you got a guy like Suzuki. He would never be big in Vince's WWE.
I know they will have him come out looking like an MMA. Yeah. And like what they're doing with Keith Lee, like what's wrong with Keith Lee during NXT when he was wrestling shirtless and the shorts? Now he has like it's still a good look for him, but it's just like he looks like he's trying to hide the weight. Like, no, the great thing about Keith Lee, he's that big, he's that strong, so and he can do all these stuff.
And I mean, but look at here. This was when Shinsuke debuted. Like he was even more of a string bean than he is, but like over the years, like he was able to build up in New Japan because they're able to focus on people for long term. In New Japan, by their system, they're able to long term storytell.
It's like an investment, like buying a like your 401k, whereas Vince McMahon's a lottery ticket. Like get the quick money with them and whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's the same thing with Vince McMahon, because like before COVID and all this stuff, you have wrestlers working, I think it was 5 days a week.
Yep.
Yeah.
5 days a week, house shows, multiple house shows, meetings, and somehow you still have to make weight, then travel across the world. They admitted that, you get a ticket, but you need to find a place to stay, no matter where you go.
It's the promotions, they own your name.
Yeah, and
well, now they're trying to argue that they own your real name.
Your real name, yeah.
So it's just like the wrestlers like it now because the schedule is not as rough when there's no house shows and all this stuff. So it's not as taxing. So you can tell that most WWE wrestlers are on the up and up finally, after all these years of like getting hurt and staying hurt. Like even when Rey Mysterio came back, it was like he came back cool. Then why did he go away? It's like, oh, he kind of got hurt during a house show. I was like, oh, damn. Even Seth Rollins, after he lost the belt, or when he had that freak accident against Kane with his knee, and we had the run of Roman Reigns a year earlier than it should have been. It's just rough because WWE can build stars. It's just the schedule couldn't. They couldn't protect the wrestlers.
And yeah, to me, wrestling is going to always be about building people and getting you invested in them. And WWE just doesn't do that long term. New Japan does, and that's why I feel it's a superior product.
I may be like I remember watching Primetime Wrestling and watching the old NWAs and just seeing them like on a little sound stage in the matches. I think when Raw came out, when they were like Raw, when it first came out, I'm like, what is this? Where's Gorilla Monsoon? And it's like, and that's when they started focusing so much on the spectacle and not the matches. You know, like you got the Four Horsemen. I'm gonna watch the Four Horsemen wrestle. Oh yeah, there's only 100 fans, or am I gonna watch a bunch of horse crap in like a huge, arena? Like they just went away from the whole wrestling. And now what is it? It's not wrestling.
I totally agree with you. The whole Carney, which wrestling was from Carney life, the whole intimates of being in these tight rooms filled with God knows less than 100,000 people, maybe less than like 10,000 people. That's what made wrestling really amazing. If you look back at ECW, even when WWE wasn't going to stadium, they had like Madison Square Garden and Hammerstein. It was amazing because it's like, oh, if you're there, you're there. You are there. Now it's like, if you're there, are you in the nosebleeds?
I remember when I saw a title change, I'm like, that's awesome. Now when you see a title change, and you're like, oh, okay.
And going back to that, people were shocked that they let Becky have a year title reign
for one of the titles.
For one of the titles. In New Japan, it's pretty commonplace to have these long things. It's about storytelling with the title. It's not about, okay, who can we build up next to take the title? Oh, okay, it's about this reign. It's not about, hey, we're gonna have him fight Randy Orton 4 times instead. That's
why I would buy pay-per-views to watch the titles change hands. But if you're gonna do like Clash of the Champions, where that's why they lost all that money, they would do champion free on TV. Everyone is so used to titles changing now. It's like the titles mean nothing. It's just.
I know. At least for Raw and SmackDown, I can say that the titles mean nothing. The New Day made the tag team titles feel like something. The Usos made the titles feel like something. When UA had all the titles, they made it feel like something, and it just sucked how all happened. Like for Raw, they don't make any title feel worthy, and it's not because of Drew McIntyre. It was because of Brock Lesnar, right? The US title, I don't know who holds that title.
Oh yeah,
right?
Lashley.
It's Lashley, right? And he's one of my favorite wrestlers, like hands down. But the US title was so put in the back burner. The last person that had the US title that I actually was like, all right, cool, that's dope, because he's pushing the title, and he's like, I should be in main event, was Rusev, and he's on AEW now.
Back in the day, when we think of U.S. or the Intercontinental titles, that was something special, man. The Macho Man, or in WCW, those titles, even though they weren't the main one, they were special too,
And so here's how I think you make them special again. And I give TNA a lot of crap, and deservedly so, in my opinion. But TNA has one of the best gimmicks for the lower titles ever, which is Option C.
So cool.
You can trade in, like, you lose your title, but you get a chance at the world title. If you did that with the U.S. title, like Lashley at any point can cash in his U.S. title.
That would be the Money in the Bank right there.
To me, that would be fantastic. And even Lucha Underground did some similar stuff.
And I really like that. I think because, one, it relinquishes the title and gives it a new light. It's not who will beat for the title, who's going to fight for this title. When Keith Lee gave up the North American title and when he won both titles, it put a new light. Like not Ridge Holland. Like, there's so many people that went after that North American title that goes into the ladder match that led up to, I forgot who winning. And it just made perfect sense because we don't have to focus on Keith Lee anymore with that title. We can move on from this. I love the Option C. It was really cool. It was kind of hokey with Austin Aries doing it, but after that, it was the most amazing thing. I rather have that instead of the Money in the Bank, because it's the Money in the Bank feels so like, and no offense though, it just feels so pointless now. Who's he gonna cash? Who's gonna cash it? Who's he gonna cash it in on? The Fiend's on Raw. Like Drew McIntyre isn't gonna drop it to Otis, and like, oh yeah, Otis is gonna cash in against Roman. Oh yeah, during the I Quit match against Jimmy in Hell in a Cell. No, that's not gonna happen.
Although that, I feel that would be funny if he cashes in and Roman just batters him.
Oh, here's my thought. This is the only way I fully believe you save Otis from Money in the Bank, if you guys allow me to have this little segment here.
Of course.
And it was funny. So I had to think about this. So Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, right? You have Otis having Money in the Bank. After Roman Reigns is done with Jimmy Uso, Roman Reigns just calls out Otis random night. And he just says, I'm done. I'm done with you and I'm done with that briefcase. Because he's lost it multiple times because of that briefcase. And this is why I wish Mandy Wild was still on SmackDown. I have Jimmy with Mandy somewhere. If you do not cash in right now and lay down for me, your tribal chief, you will never see her again. And that's how you save Otis. You feel bad for him. He got tricked to losing his title in a worse way than Mr. Kennedy. And then you save his face. And then we're on the road of Otis needs to face Roman one-on-one fairly. And that's how you save him. That's how you save Otis. That's the best way.
But here's the whole thing: is WWE doesn't care about that,
and that's what boggles the mind. Like you can save, like Otis is just this big joke, and I don't like it. Like he's winning with the Worm. I get it. It's funny and it looks cool and it's stupid, but it's over. Like he deserved that WrestleMania moment. We all agreed to that. Mm-hmm. So save him, please.
I think COVID is proving that WWE, without the spectacle of large arenas and everything, it's just like
it's so empty.
It's a subpar product. It's like
a,
you know what I mean?
It's like a very bad sandwich.
It's like going to a big ass movie theater and trying to watch on your cell phone, like the movie. Like without all the spectacle of like Chase or Stadium or whatever, you know, all they are is just a bunch of people doing boring ass interviews and having some matches.
But like a New Japan house show feels important.
Yeah.
They keep track of people's records during house shows.
And amazingly, like when titles don't change hands, they feel like they should have changed hands, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just random, like, oh, they have a title shot randomly.
When you watch their matches, right, even at the smaller places like I was watching, you know, it's cool. It's got a good feeling. It reminds me of like, you know, when I was a kid watching. But then when they have a big show, like when Okada came out at the Wrestle Kingdom, with that, it's awesome, man. They know when to do it. They know when you need the spectacle and when you don't. Whereas WWE is all about the spectacle. You know what I mean? It's like it's all about. Well, they don't buy fireworks anymore because they're going broke. But
yeah, New Japan knows the less is more, and WWE knows more is more. And more.
and also go back to it. The Nakamura AJ Styles match at Wrestle Kingdom was fantastic. And it didn't have like this huge setup. It was somebody kind of cashing in his G1, and it was a great match. It was a fantastic match that had people watching the whole time. Their WWE match had months of setup, had Shinsuke winning the Royal Rumble, had all of this build, and it was to set up a heel turn at the end of the match.
Like I still remember Shinsuke winning that Royal Rumble and the pop he got when he was asked who he wanted to face.
Because people wanted that match again.
It's still amazing to me that pop never felt so fake after that match. I was like, dude, I just wish we got
that match.
We just got that match. And I know it's 4 or 5 years later. They're not in their technical prime. And they have to wrestle the WWE style.
They can still put on a match.
Back in the day, that pop would be what decided what they would do with them. Now, they don't care. He doesn't even care about that. You know, like Keith Lee, like remember I was telling you in San Jose, hearing the screams, that used to dictate whether he was going to get pushed or not. And now they just don't care because if it's not what, Vince or whatever wants. They don't care.
So I think the biggest example of that happened earlier this year. The most maligned and criticized storyline in the WWE in wrestling and probably for a few years was the Lana Rusev,
Oh my God.
Bobby Lashley angle. Everybody hated it, but people tuned in to see how much of a dumpster fire it was.
Yep, those
Vince,
YouTube views have never been higher.
So Vince said, "Look, I'm getting ad money from this. We're going to keep going."
Yeah.
Everybody told him this was a bad idea, that people are making fun of you for it. He knew people were making fun of him for it, but he's like, "How can I make it worse so that more people tune in to see how bad it is?"
It's kind of like an accident on the freeway. Everyone slows down to look. It's horrible. But like I said, ad revenue, trying making money. That's their first.
That's the first and only deal.
It was horrible.
And if you looked in the arena during those segments, it was crickets.
Yeah.
You literally see everyone like on their phones.
I think they drowned out the whole boring chants. You can definitely tell there should have been boring chants during this, or just straight laughing.
I mean, we're only a few years out from having a Snooki at WrestleMania match.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
She was more impressive than most celebrities, though. I didn't know she can tumble like that. It was pretty cool. After that, it was like, oh, okay, why is she here again?
Well, hopefully competition is good and it forces, hopefully, New Japan somehow gets a presence over here.
Hopefully the LA Dojo is able to take off after COVID.
Because if they that will put pressure on them, because just that small show we went to was so good. And I could just see those little shows selling out all the time. It's much more, as a fan, to be that close and to see the moves and to see real moves and not see a totally missed super kick. Seeing Okada do some badass stuff. It's great, man. Like I said, I hope AEW gets better. I hope everyone gets better so we don't have to keep watching these crap storylines.
And I fully believe that AEW is getting better, because the day where AEW was on Tuesdays and NXT was on Wednesdays, it was for 2 weeks. AEW did its highest ratings and NXT did its highest ratings, and instead of having it stick to that and just having both companies just make money and be happy, and they're getting near 1 million views, WWE just goes back to WWE goes back to Wednesdays, and I was like, why? There was no reason for it.
Because the Monday Night War
It's
still a sticking point for Vince McMahon that he beat Ted Turner, and he's going to force us to relive it.
Yeah, he's not going to beat that Khan guy now. I think that one thing AEW does well is their social media and stuff. That's like, compared to WWE, because they're more, they're more, I don't know if they're younger, but they have more youthful look with Twitch and stuff like that. So I think that's where, WWE could learn something, like on their social media stuff and getting the names of like lesser known wrestlers like Orange Cassidy, even though people, he has a weird gimmick. I mean, the fact that they'll spotlight someone like that, I think is pretty cool, even if it doesn't go far,
I have such an odd fascination with Orange Cassidy, and I fully believe Roman Reigns' character is just making fun of Orange Cassidy. That's how I feel, but to this day, I really hope that Orange does beat Cody for that TNT title, if anything. So good luck for him.
So
that poor guy takes such a trashing.
So as we're kind of moving towards the wrap up, on the next show we should know the winners of the G1, and we can start to speculate on what's going to happen with that briefcase, and also we'll hopefully have better news about Lars Sullivan. I know that Nelson's going to do some research and watch Seattle Bareback Boys after this.
I'm going to watch that one that was made back in with Gold. What was his name? Val Venus? Was it? Saving Ryan's Privates. Or Shaving It, whatever. Part 2.
You mean before Kai and Tai chopped off his penis?
That was awesome.
I still can't believe I watched it as a kid.
Yeah,
I was a young ass kid too. That's all bad.
And then
cut his dong like.
And just
excuse
one
me?
last request over here, Keish. Please please restrain yourself and just don't jump in the ring this time.
Hey, Jay White, we need to push the real star of New Japan Wrestling.
Oh man, Gedo, if he turns on Jay White, that'd be awesome.
Oh man, you need to see me coming in here with evil stuff.
Oh my god, what happened? Like you choked him out with a bucket hat.
Oh man, well, we'll see you next time.
We'll see you guys next time.
Yeah. So we'll have a bunch of. We got a Twitter now, Instagram, and now we're on every Spotify, YouTube, and a bunch of other spots.
Yeah, please like, subscribe, leave comments. It will help us tremendously. We're all open to, some criticism, and hopefully it's constructive because we know we're not the best and we want to get better as we do.
Yep. So, what do you say? Is it time to go, Raymond? We're asking another co-host.
Yep, he's at the door.
Okay. All right. Till next time. Thank you.
Later.
Can you hear this, guys? No, Gedo.